So today you join me in a Fiat 500X. What does X mean? Fiat 500X? Well, it's basically this thing. It's a bigger version of the Fiat 500. They don't actually share much in common. But why would you want to buy one of these? Or would you want to buy one of these? If I'm honest, there's only one reason why you should buy a Fiat 500X, and that is because you like how it looks. You see, there's really nothing very special about this car, apart from how it looks, if that's your cup of tea. It certainly doesn't float my boat, but each to their own. Is there any reason why you shouldn't buy this car? Well, not really, and that's the thing. It doesn't really have much going for it, but then nothing is really very bad about it either. Let's talk about what's good and bad about it. Firstly, I want to talk about how it rides. And it's a small SUV, which means it's a small bit bad. And that's because SUVs are a bit too high and a bit too heavy than they need to be. I mean, let's take a human being. A human being is standing up. That human being could be pushed over by somebody if they tried hard enough. But if you take a human being who is sitting down, that human being is going to be a lot harder to push over. And the same is true with a car. The higher up a car is and the heavier it is, the higher its center of gravity is the proper word. That's the proper term for this. The worse it's probably going to drive. It means it's not going to be as good through the corners, and it's going to take longer to stop, and it's going to take longer to accelerate. And you may not care about that. You may think, oh, I don't care about that. But it means the safety of that car is now lower for those aspects. Okay, if you hit an object, it may protect you a bit more, because when you have more mass behind you, you're more likely to come off better. But you are more likely to get into trouble because of its lack of handling. And there is another thing, and this thing you are going to care about, because the higher the center of gravity of a car, like this car, is a bit too high, the harder they have to make the suspension to make it stable. So therefore, it does make a meal out of this road. It does not ride as good as most cars I drive. You feel every bump that bit more, which is completely contradictory, because before I drove many SUVs and I would see them driving around, I used to think, oh, they look comfy, lots of suspension travel. And then I got in one and I thought, what on earth is going on? Rant over about SUVs, I promise. Apart from the name, SUV, Sports Utility Vehicle. Yes, it will take you to a sporting event, but it's not very sporty. It should be called a HUV, a High Utility Vehicle. Rant over now, I promise. Moving on, the steering. It's okay, but to be honest, it's not very good. It's similar to most cars like this, if I'm honest with you, so you can't say it's terrible. Let's see, I've got a roundabout here. I'm going to go right at this roundabout. Let's see how it feels as I put some steering lock on as I go right at this roundabout. Yeah. And you see, there's the problem. The steering did not weight up at all as I turned the wheel. So it doesn't matter how much you're turning, the steering feels exactly the same. And if you're used to a car with good steering, that feels weird, because generally speaking, as you go around a corner, as you add steering generally gets a bit heavier, and that's good feedback. That's feedback to say the road is okay, we're gripping the road, we're not going to lose traction. And when the steering starts to get a bit lighter, that normally means you're pushing things a bit too far and you are losing traction, which gives you an early warning that you need to sort things out. But when the steering doesn't get any heavier at all, you really don't know how much grip you've got left. Now, of course, it doesn't really matter that much, because generally you're driving on the road and you're driving it sensibly, well within its limits. But it does matter in poor conditions, particularly in the winter, where that little extra feedback goes a long way. I was actually driving a Volvo recently, and the steering would get lighter as you added more steering lock. I don't know where the word steering lock comes from. It means, lock basically means how much you're turning the wheel. If you know, let me know in the comments. But anyway, this Volvo would get lighter as you added more steering, and that was a very horrible feeling. I mean, it would get heavier to begin with, and then suddenly, once you got beyond, I don't know, a quarter turn of the wheel, it would get lighter again. And that made my heart kind of, you know, when you have a little bit of a scared moment and your heart misses a beat? Yeah, that would happen to me, because I think, oh gosh, understeer, I've lost grip. What am I on, ice? It's the middle of summer. It's just how it felt because the steering got lighter. But as I say, you can't hold these things against this car, because all cars of this type are like that. That's why I don't like these cars very much. Let's move on to the brake pedal. Another mini roundabout coming up here. So let's see how these brakes are. Nice, actually. I will have to say, they are not bad. I would actually put them as good. I'm not performance testing these brakes. That's not the idea in this review. The idea in this review is to know how it's like to drive on the road. And what's good about the brakes is not a huge amount of dead travel. Once you start pressing it, the brakes do bite and start to slow you down. They don't bite too aggressively, and they're quite easy to modulate, which means it's easy to slow down smoothly, which is always a nice thing to have from your brakes. Now let's move on to the gears. What are they like? Well, that's first. That felt quite nice actually. Second, also pretty good. I'll go up to third after this bend. See how it handles. Very nice. I like this gear stick. I like the way it self-centers. It's not too heavy. It self-centers very nicely as well, so you know exactly where neutral is, which helps you find third and fourth. And it's not too hard to push it forwards or backwards, and it's not too easy either. So you really know when you've got it into gear, but it's not hard to put it into gear. So that I like. Nice gear stick. Something that does surprise me about this car is this interior. Now, it's not going to rival a BMW or an Audi, but it certainly does rival a Ford or a Vauxhall, and it's not priced like a BMW or an Audi. It is priced more like a Ford or a Vauxhall, so it's done well there. I'd say it's better than most Fords and Vauxhalls I've been in of recent years. The materials are very squidgy, and everyone likes squidgy. There's another bump, blooming SUV. No, move on, Richard. Right, yes, the materials are very squidgy, and people like squidgy materials these days, and I do too, because they don't rattle as much. They dampen the sound. They almost act as almost like a sound insulator as well. And you've got this nice dashboard. It's the body colour, so this is green because the body's green, and that really brightens the interior in it, and it feels really good quality as well, this painted surface, nice shiny clear lacquer over it. But one of my favourite things about this interior is this steering wheel. Now, I hate the shape of the steering wheel. These spokes are way too chunky, and for me to get my hands around it, I have to hold it at 10 and 2. Now, they say you should hold a steering wheel at 10 to 2. It's like a textbook way, but to be honest with you, it's not the best way, because you're not very relaxed. Look at me, I'm driving my hands at 10 to 2 now. Do I look like I'm enjoying this right now? It's awkward. Your arms are in the air. Tend to drive more like this, quarter to 3, or even a slightly bit lower. But what I love about this steering wheel is not the shape of it's horrible, I've said that, but it's the smoothness, this leather. My gosh, it's one of the nicest leathers I've ever felt. Not only on a steering wheel, but just in general. I could literally just do this. I could drive along stroking this interior. I'm not going to stroke the interior, I'll stroke the steering wheel. I could do that for about 5 minutes, I reckon. Really nice. This is the Popstar model. Now, the Popstar model is the next up from the bottom of the range, being the Pop. And if I'm honest, it's all you really need. It's got all the equipment you need. It's got dual zone climate control. It's got a very good cruise control system, which works very nicely. It's got all the connectivity you need, and the sound system is really good. Good lows, good mids, good highs, and it is really quite loud as well. And these seats are comfortable. I do like these seats. I could do a sizable journey in these seats quite happily, and they're the kind of seat which I'm quite confident most people, short, tall, big, small, will find comfortable. The clutch is nice. It's not heavy, it's not too light, and it's quite easy to feel the bite point with it. I mean, it is a diesel, this one, which generally makes it a bit easier to find the bite point, because it rattles. Diesels do rattle, and that moves me on to this engine. Actually, a 1.6 diesel that they use in quite a few Fiats and even some Vauxhalls. That was to do with a Fiat and General Motors merger that kind of went wrong, so they ended up sharing some parts. But anyway, I'm not going to go into that. But yeah, 120 horsepower, and it's quite punchy. It's not fast. It feels faster than it is, as a lot of diesels do. If you actually try and get this thing from 0 to 60, it does take a little bit longer than average, but it feels like it's quicker because you get that sudden punch when you put your foot on the gas and the turbo kicks in and it shoots you up the road. But the problem is, it doesn't last long because it is a diesel, and it is the noisiest diesel I have driven in years. I think I'd have to go back to 2002 to find a car noisier than this. And that's partly why the clutch is so communicative and easy, is because the engine's so agricultural, you can't really miss the clutch bite point if you tried. It's very noticeable. It definitely vibrates your leg when you get there. It has these drive mode select things down here, which you can turn to sporty, normal, and bad weather. And to be honest with you, they're completely useless. If you go into sporty mode, all it does is means you don't have any control over your gas pedal. You press your gas a little bit, you have full throttle. So your gas pedal basically becomes an on-off switch, which is completely useless. I don't quite know what the wet weather mode does, but I also don't have much confidence in that either. I'm sure it's just a bit of a gimmick. This car is certainly not four-wheel drive or designed for extreme conditions. It is a normal road car with poor dynamics. Bumps, very noticeable. Here we go again, bumps everywhere. Now, I know this is actually a bumpy road, but it's normally better than that. In my everyday car, it's a lot more comfortable than that. So now I'm in a car park, and I'm going to try and park it. Parking space here, and let's get that parking space behind us. This turning circle makes this quite quick and easy. And these big wing mirrors mean I can literally see it. I don't even have to lower the wing mirrors. This is a normal place and I can see all of the space there. I can drive, if I put it in reverse, I can drive towards the space now. Still see the line. I can straighten up into the space. I can see everything in both sides. That makes light work of parking. Light steering, reverse sensors, know exactly how close I am to something, and I can see the sides. Job done. Definitely easy to park. That's a good thing going for this car. I don't like the indicator sound. It's a little bit intrusive for my liking, but I do like the electronic handbrake. As long as your seatbelt's on, first gear, clutch the bite point, it disengages for you. However, I can't really say that's a good thing about this car, because so many cars have it these days. More cars have it than don't. This is a 5-year-old car, so it's a fairly up-to-date car. Oh look, speed bumps on a bumpy road. In a car that's high up and should be able to deal with them well. Oh look, there's its friend, this white car on the left here. That is a Fiat 500L. There's no one behind me. I'll just reverse back and give you a better look at that. So that's the other alternative you can have. That's more of the, this is more of a styling SUV. That is more of a practical solution to the Fiat 500. Basically, the reason why these cars, the 500X and the 500L, were created is because there's an awful lot of young ladies who bought Fiat 500s, and inevitably some of those then have a family and then leave the Fiat 500, and Fiat were like, well, how can we keep those customers? They want a car that looks like a Fiat 500. I know what we'll do. We'll try and make a Fiat 500 that's practical. The problem is, at least as far as I can tell, is a Fiat 500 looks a little bit, you might like it, not for me. The 500X, this one, I can accept its styling. It's definitely not my cup of tea. It's not the sort of thing I like the look of, but I can see why it appeals. It's a well presented product, but the 500L looks a bit clumsy to me. The windows, the proportions are just a bit out. It's like, let's make sure he's waiting for me. Thank you very much, sir. It's like having, say, a car with, you know, really tiny wheels. Oh, another bump. Yeah, it's like having a car with really tiny wheels or really big wheels or something. It's just a bit out of proportion. And the Fiat 500L, I can't really explain it. I think it's something to do with the windows, but when I see it, I just think, oh, has it melted? This car is akin to a Volkswagen Golf or a Ford Focus when it comes to space, when it comes to rear leg room and the boot and up front. Don't expect it to be bigger inside because it's bigger on the outside. That's rarely the case in these bigger cars. The inside, it's very usable. I wouldn't complain about it, but I wouldn't say it's particularly great either. It doesn't make great use of the space it has. However, I have to say, after trying to review this car, I like it a little bit more because I've noticed some of the better aspects of it. Like, it does have good brakes, the clutch and the gears are nice. I mean, the steering's not very nice, but most cars these days are like that. Buy a BMW if you want better steering. I find they have a little bit nicer. Ford do seem to do quite good steering most of the time, although you got to buy quite a nice Ford to get a nice feeling steering wheel in those. I find they're normally very tacky feeling, and it's really easy to park. So should you buy one of these cars? Well, again, you've got to like the look of it first, because it's not exactly a subdued look. It's not a don't turn any heads, blend into the crowd kind of look. It does, for me, it stands out the way it's styled. It's very retro. So if you like the look of it and you want a car that's relatively easy to drive and very easy to park, this is actually quite a good car. So I have to say, better than I expected. And what about reliability and running costs? Well, Fiat have never had a good reputation for reliability, but these days they don't really have a bad reputation either. They're not great and they're not bad. They're acceptable, but then they're quite cheap to fix. So even though they're not the most reliable car out there, it's not the most expensive to fix, so long as you use a decent garage. Of course, someone could charge an awful lot of money to fix anything if they wanted to, but if you have a good garage, these should not cost you a fortune to put right if they go wrong. And another aspect of running costs, of course, is the fuel consumption. And driving around town right now, I got 39.8 mpg with a little bit of idling as well. I mean, if I wasn't doing this video, I'm sure it would be in the low 40s. And on the motorway, I can get close to 60. So this 1.6 diesel, although it's quite noisy and agricultural, it's also quite frugal. Well, I hope this video helps you decide whether or not you think this is a car for you. If you think it does, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to get my future videos. And until the next one, cheerio.